NBA announcers are supposed to present professional basketball games for viewing audiences. NBA announcers are also expected to do research about the teams, their players, and previous performances to provide accurate and concise reporting during the game. But sometimes announcers slip up and say things they probably or definitely shouldn't. So stay tuned and don't go away, because today we're looking at how LeBron James destroyed an NBA announcer over Kevin Porter's dead dad remark. First up, what on earth was he thinking? Let's take a look. Of course, by he, we're referring to NBC Sports Washington announcer Glenn Consor. As you are about to see, Consor's comments during the recent Wizards and Rockets game were downright offensive. Considering the fact that Consor is a graduate of Boston University and even made the Dean's List, there's no question that he ought to have known better. Consor is under fire for a comment about Houston Rockets star Kevin Porter Jr.'s late father during the Rockets' 114-111 win over the Washington Wizards on Thursday. It all started after Porter Jr. hit a game-winning three-pointer at the buzzer, and Consor said, "You've got to give credit. Kevin Porter Jr., like his dad, pulled that trigger right at the right time." Consor was referring to Porter's father, Brian Kevin Porter Sr., who died in July of 2004 after being shot at a bar in South Seattle, where Kevin Porter Jr. and his two sisters grew up. Porter Sr. also pled guilty to first-degree manslaughter in the shooting death of a 14-year-old girl in 1993 and served 4.5 years in prison. Many reacted with disgust to Consor's comments, including King James, LA Lakers superstar LeBron James. Next up, how did King James react to Consor's comments? You're about to find out. James didn't hold any punches. In fact, quite the opposite. He let Consor have it and tweeted, "Oh, he thought this was cool, huh? Now, we ain't going for this. Sorry, but this ain't going to fly. How insensitive can you be to say something like this? Beat it, man. I pray for you, but there's no place in our beautiful game for you." And I have to say, I share James's outrage. Consor's comments were insensitive and very poor taste, and to be frank, just plain stupid. It's almost as if Consor forgot he was live on air and just thinking out loud. And it appears as though Consor himself agrees with James's assessment, because shortly after the incident, Consor released a statement on his Twitter account and apologized for his words. Consor started by saying, "Please allow me to take this opportunity to sincerely apologize to Kevin Porter Jr., his family, and the Rockets organization for the comments I made during last night's game. I mistakenly thought that Kevin was the son of former Washington player Kevin Porter and was unaware that the words I chose to describe his game-winning shot would be in any way hurtful or insensitive. I have reached out to Kevin to personally apologize and hope to be able to talk with him again soon." Up next, how are basketball fans reacting to Consor's comments? Let's find out. The reactions have been mixed, with Consor's closest friends and colleagues standing by his side. However, there are some who don't believe his explanation about the Kevin Porter mix-up, and it's easy to see why. Because it seems like a blatant lie. Everyone in NBA circles knows that the 22-year-old Kevin Porter Jr. has no relation to the former Wizards player Kevin Porter, who is now in his early 70s. It's common knowledge among NBA insiders. So Consor's apology and reasoning seems like nothing more than a sad attempt at saving face. Porter Jr. was only 4 when his father was killed and wore the number 4 in his college days to honor his father. Reflecting on the tragedy in June 2019, Porter Jr. said, "I don't remember much, but I know he was shot multiple times, and that was basically the end of that. A lot of people call me Kevin Porter, and I get offended because I'm a junior. I'm basically a 2.0 of my father." Porter Jr. paid tribute to his father at the 2019 NBA draft after being selected 30th overall by the Milwaukee Bucks. He wore a velvet green suit with images of his father on the inside of his jacket on the red carpet. Porter Jr. recently returned from serving a one-game suspension for conduct detrimental to the team. Rockets coach Stephen Silas suspended Porter Jr. after the player had a spirited debate and lost his temper at halftime after losing to Denver a few weeks back. Porter Jr. reportedly left the arena after having a confrontation in the locker room with assistant coach John Lucas. Stay tuned and don't go away, because we've got a ton of NBA news headed your way. Next up, what are some of the latest trades that are creating buzz? You're about to find out. It's uncommon for a 22-year-old wing to be available on the trade market, let alone one who gave explosive performances in a conference finals game. The New York Knicks reportedly acquired Cam Reddish from the team that beat them in last year's playoffs. If you recall, Reddish wasn't available for the Atlanta Hawks in that series due to an Achilles injury. In the final game of Atlanta's surprisingly successful season, Reddish upped his game and shot 6 for 7 from three-point range and led a comeback that ultimately came up short. Nonetheless, Reddish's performance was a reminder to everyone watching that he's a valuable asset. The team's front office, led by general manager Travis Schlenk, had so many draft picks, and they now had to decide how to distribute their time and money. Atlanta could have broken up its core of young players last summer, but the Hawks are choosing the flexibility and opportunities that come with having a first-round pick over the opportunity to remain solely in what Schlenk calls the Reddish business. Reddish is eligible for a rookie contract extension in the summer of 2022, but if he doesn't sign Granted, he'll be a restricted free agent in the summer of 2023. Atlanta was not interested in giving Reddish the kind of extension he was looking for. Up next, how will the Knicks' decision to sign Reddish play out in the future? Let's find out. By acquiring Reddish, the Knicks may have set themselves up for difficult roster choices in the future. The Knicks don't have the same long-term financial commitments that the Hawks do, so the trade gives New York some much-needed skill and also reunites Reddish with his college teammate R.J. Barrett. Barrett and Reddish are also longtime friends, but some aren't so sure if the Knicks' latest acquisition of Reddish was a good move. I guess it depends on whether or not you think there's a decent chance that Reddish turns into a star. If he does, then trading a first-round pick that could very well turn into 2 second-round picks is a great deal. Player Solomon Hill is out for the season and will occupy a roster spot, but this means that the Knicks will have to terminate Ryan Arcidiacono's 10-day contract early. Reddish desperately wanted to get a spot on the team that would give him a bigger role, and playing for New York, he'll have an opportunity to play more than the 23.4 minutes he was averaging while playing for Atlanta. But there's some competition for Reddish on the Knicks bench, and many are wondering if Coach Tom Thibodeau will turn Evan Fournier into a sixth man. Other questions fans are asking themselves is, will Fournier be on the roster past the deadline? And how much playing can Reddish even handle? But many fans of Reddish think that the answer is a lot. Next up, why are the Knicks fans hopeful that Reddish will be a blessing? Let's dig a little deeper. If you're a Reddish fan, then you know the guy is prone to scoring outbursts and serious hot streaks. Not to mention, he's deadly from the three-point line. It wasn't the conference finals, but Reddish went 8 for 13 in the deep end and scored 33 points against the Chicago Bulls a couple days after Christmas. Wow, no one can deny how impressive that is. And 5 days before that, Reddish sank 34 in 42 minutes against the Orlando Magic. Critics of Reddish will point to the fact that he hasn't done this sort of thing consistently, but at the same time, it would be wrong to expect him to, considering all the talent he's got around him and the fact that he was playing alongside Trae Young, who gives dazzling performances nearly every time he steps on the court. This season, though, 63% of Reddish's baskets were assisted, and that is the same percentage as Taj Gibson. The 63% is also the lowest percentage of Reddish's 3-year career thus far. For critics not buying into the Reddish hype, they argue that there are good reasons for this. Critics argue he's shooting 28.3% on pull-up threes and 30.2% on pull-up twos, while shooting 30% from mid-range and 57% at the rim. Finally, our NBA mascot's a distraction. Apparently, Devin Booker, the 25-year-old shooting guard and small forward for the Phoenix Suns, thinks they are. Things got weird recently when the Toronto Raptors played the Phoenix Suns after Booker became angry at the Raptors mascot, known simply as the Raptor, and claimed that it was distracting him while he was attempting free throws in the final seconds of the game. I don't know about you, but I think the Raptor's really cool. For his complaining, the internet trolled Booker and essentially called him a big baby. And that's a wrap for today's video. Thanks for watching.